Hello and welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles in association with Movie Maker magazine. I'm Carolyn McDonald and I'm here with Cody Wilson and Tiffany Gist, makers of the documentary film Driven. Thank you for being with us today, guys.
Thank you for having
Let's,
us.
oh,
Sure.
you're
Thank you so
welcome.
much.
You're
You're thrilled to
welcome.
be
My
here.
pleasure. So let's take a look at a clip of the film. So for people who may not have seen the film, why don't you guys, one of you, give a short synopsis of the story?
Um, sure. Yeah, I can totally do that. So Driven is about someone that has given everything that has been taken from him, and it's how he's able to overcome the odds and come out on top. Whenever, life kind of takes things from you, it's not the end of the road. And I think Driven really speaks to that.
Yeah, it certainly does. It's such a moving and an inspiring story. And how did you meet Mario and decide to tell this story?
Well, like I've said in the past, I mean, Mario, he was a difficult guy to get a hold of. He didn't really have a website. He didn't have a phone number that was out in the open. He didn't, he's kind of a recluse. But through Facebook, I was actually able to find a family member and reach out and get a hold of Mario. And Mario invited me to drive up about 3 hours north to meet him at this racetrack, and I did. I met him. He was just one of the most inspirational guys I've met. He's down to earth, hilarious. I said, "Listen, I want to tell your story. What can we do?" And he was all for it.
Wow, wow. And yeah, again, tell us a little bit more about what the specifics of his story, his accident, and how gaining access into his life, a little more with him and his family.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I first met Mario, I mean, learning about his story, I mean, learning about his accident and what happened and how he was on this path to absolute success. I mean, he was a prodigy in his sport, um, and that was all stripped from him from one day. One day in his life, everything was taken away. So learning about that and seeing how he was able to adapt and not give up, whereas I think it'd be pretty easy for most people to just call it quits on a sport that they love or on something that they're destined to do. Um, Seeing that really just inspired me to try to tell this. And I mean, it inspired our crew. I'm sure Tiffany can speak to this as well. I mean, there was some definitely hard days trying to tell this film. And the fact that Mario never quit, I mean, I think he was going 24/7. He never slept. He just kept like, let's keep going.
Mhm.
I
It
think
was
one of
so
the
inspiring.
interesting to Cody's point, I think one of the interesting things is like, which I think a lot of people don't know. One of the first things that led Cody to Mario was an article that that Red Bull did on him because he's like a Red Bull affiliated athlete, and so when he read this article, he was like, man, and then they met, and then sort of the film was sort of born out of these steps or whatever, and anyway, but from that article, I was just like, man, this guy's done a lot. I mean, you would not know that he was quadriplegic from seeing all the things that he's done after this accident. So going into the documentary, we started digging into his life and digging into the past and obviously what before he became quadriplegic and what happened, during the accident that changed his life, to this new sort of chapter he's in now. And even what he was doing before. It's like the drive, no pun intended with Driven, but like the drive was the same. His drive for motorsports before the accident was the same, if not more, after. And that's what was like, I think, enthralling and kind of like miraculous to see in person, seeing his family and seeing how they all just sort of like overcame a tragedy that could have really taken his life. He focused on what he didn't lose rather than what he did lose. And I think that's what makes
Oh,
the story really special.
wow, wow, absolutely. So how much time did you spend with him? What was the schedule like for shooting?
Yeah, I mean, so we started shooting at the end of August, and I think we wrapped up at the middle of November. And we filmed mostly was on the weekends. So it was about 6 to 7 weeks, maybe 8 weeks of weekends of filming. There was a couple weekends there where we were literally living with Mario, and he was either staying at my place or we were up there with him. So it took some time. It was nonstop in terms of like, okay, because we drive about 4 or 5 hours up to go see Mario to stay with him, come back, or sometimes we drive like 6 hours, or it was just a lot of driving.
That was the troubling part. It was definitely mostly a remote shoot. I mean, still like local to, you know, like California, but none of it was in LA. Like we were all driving to sort of these other towns, and they were at least 3 to 4 hours, if not, like you said, up to 6 hours away. And we're having to do that every weekend and just keep going and keep going. And it was, and he doesn't stay still. Like it would be different if he lived in a town and we would just go there. He'd be like, oh, I'm going to be in Monterey this weekend. Oh, I'm going up to so-and-so. He even went to Vegas and he was like, oh, you guys want to come? We're like, we can't go to Vegas, buddy. Like, we love you. But he's like, I'm going to be in Ohio. I was like, we'll see you when you get back. I was like, he's not used to having a crew follow him around. I can tell because he just goes, man. He's really mobile. You know, he's just like, and I think that's this thing. And in fact, I want to say he might have said it in the film, if not in the interview that maybe didn't make it in the film, but he was just like, his biggest fear is, you know, like just sitting still. He doesn't want to stop living. You know, this tragedy didn't define him in that way. It defined his drive to have to go further and to go faster and to keep going. Because if he lets it stop him, then that's the tragedy.
Right. And even in his drive, if you will, what kind of physical production challenge did that pose for you?
Tiffany, I'll let you take it away, but oh my God, I have so many I could throw out. But
like, yeah, I was thinking the one obvious one is like locking him down. Locking him down. He's very, very, you know, flighty in the best of ways, I guess, because he's just very impulsive. So he's always going and doing. So trying to follow somebody who's always going and doing, if you don't have unlimited resources, is difficult. Right. So we had to have quite a few conversations about logistics. And being like, hey, buddy, we got to have some kind of plan here. We can't just go wherever you go. And we're there to capture his life, you know, not the other way around, of course, but there is some level of, you know, logistics we have to have in place in order to be able to do things legally and safely and things like that. So that was a challenge. And then also just with his personal sort of physical issues, he, you know, Mario, which we don't talk much about in the film, but Mario's in constant pain. I mean, even though he's strong and he's overcoming, he's still dealing with all of what the trauma that has happened to his body. And that has lasting effects. And he never focuses on that in his life. So we don't focus on it a ton in the film, but it's constant. I mean, he's in pain a lot, and he you know, he moves around wonderfully for all the challenges that he has, but that's something to consider. And we were always like, we don't want to push him too hard. We don't want to ask too much of him. We want to make sure that we're staying really cognizant of how he's feeling, what he's physically capable of. Even if he would push himself more than we would, you know, we'd have to watch that, because it'd be like, dude, you haven't slept, or you haven't eaten, or you haven't, like, he just goes. And I'm like,
and there's a couple,
you want your real life, but when we're filming, we got to take care of you.
There's definitely a couple moments there where, I mean, Mario, I think, Tiffany, if you remember at the end of the shoot, Mario was, I mean, he was pushing himself and we were pushing him to a brink of, the amount of exhaustion I've never seen Mario at. But he kept being like, I'm fine, let's keep going, let's keep going. And it was his dad that actually came up to me. It's like, hey, he's almost out, like, you have to call it. And that was something that we were not cognizant of, because Mario will just put on a mask and just go until he can't go anymore.
How many hours a day? What were the hours like?
One of the final shoot days, that day in particular, I think that was about almost a 10 to 12 hour day with Mario. But he was working out. He was doing everything. He was like going 110. And I mean, has such a positive attitude while it's happening. So it's, you know, it's really hard to tell, but you know, that's Mario. He pushes himself till he can't go any further. But I think also one of the logistical issues in particular was that day of Mario driving and got in an accident. So I think it was interesting. So that Mario drives and he likes to drive fast. And one of the most, I think, difficult logistics for us, we had this huge shoot planned where we're finally going to get him on a track, finally going to get him using this device, and finally, like, the stars have aligned, and this is the biggest.
Weeks and weeks and weeks of production, like trying to get everything aligned to film him like on this racetrack, like actually racing.
And insurance wise, it's a lot harder than one would think if you want to go about it the correct way. And the day before, I get a text from him saying, "Hey man, sorry, wrecked my car. Don't think I can do it." And it was just like everything that we've been planning for out the window. But I mean, that was kind of Mario's life, you know.
And he was obviously good. He was safe. He didn't get injured. And
of course, I mean, and that's like the number one thought. I'm just like, oh my goodness, like what? Please, like we need you in one piece. Like, you know, it's amazing that you have survived, you know, the accidents, because obviously the crash that, you know, sort of severed his spine and changed his physical life. It that is one big accident, but he's had many. Let's be clear, you know, many. He got up just fine before the accident that, you know, caused him to have this version of life. But even after that, he's crashed, you know. And so Mario's crashes his car a lot. I'm freaking out because I'm like, oh my goodness, a car, you know, anybody would say a car accident, like you totaled your car. What do you mean? And this wasn't on a racetrack either. This was just on the highway, I believe. And he was just like, yeah, I was just driving back to so-and-so and I totaled my car. And I'm thinking, what? And obviously he was okay, but that's when I think we all pulled back and we're like, look, we know you're good to keep filming, but that alone scared me enough to say like, hey, let's do what we need for the, you know, for the shoot to get like the last little pieces of his story or whatever, but we didn't even do the racetrack. So we were like, we're not doing it. It's not worth it.
Right. There was one small part of the film that jumped out at me because it's just kind of where I like to research. He talked about when, at the time of that accident that did change his life, he said he felt himself having a near-death experience where he was hovering over and he was asked if he wanted to stay, he could stay. If he wanted to go, he could go on, you know. How did you witness that influenced the way he behaved? Like you said, he's nonstop in spite of the pain. Did he ever elaborate any more on that experience and how it influenced him?
Yeah, I mean, you know, when I first met Mario, he told me the story. The Red Bull article, he said a very similar story, but it wasn't until, and I mean, when I heard the story, it was like, oh, this is, I mean, it was very impactful. And we knew we had to like figure out a way to capture that and capture it fresh. But we decided to take him to the spot where he had the crash without like really addressing it, and have him relive the moment. And he hadn't been there since the crash. And we went to the exact same spot. And I mean, you know, Mario I can't say enough good things about the guy. And I mean, but he's at the same time, he's you know, one line, he knows what to say, he knows how to talk. But when we took him there, it was different. And he really did, I think, relive this experience that changed his life. And when he said that line, you know, when I was asked, could I stay or can I stay or should I stay or should I go? And I said, hell yes, I want to stay. That really became clear to me being with this guy that, I mean, I think Mario feels like a caged bird in a lot of sense. And the only thing that's freeing to him is living and driving and being on the track is like how he's able to spread his wings. And he's confined to this wheelchair, but at the same time, I mean, you would never know. I mean, like he's I think that experience in his life has really taken away the fear. And I mean, talking to him, taken away the fear of, you know, dying, I mean, because, and it puts things in perspective to him. So, I mean, it was, I think at our hardest moments, because the film, I mean, it was definitely very difficult at times, but Mario really like lifted us up. So, I mean, it was kind of more of an experience of us growing from Mario than Mario growing from us. So
it's huge. I mean, their family, Mario, his parents, they're huge people of faith, and they have, you know, and they made that really clear when we began the process. Like, that's what's anchoring them, and that's what they sort of, you know, that's their belief system, and they really believe that, you know, God had his hand on Mario. And she even says it in the film, I believe. She's just like, I just pray and just let him go, because what else are you going to do with your child? You know, he's doing something dangerous that he loves. That's a sport, you know, and as reckless as it may seem to many other parents, she was like, I knew he was built for this, so we just had to let it go. And then something like that happens. I think she just thought, a lot of people may lose their faith over something like that, but they ended up leaning in. And I thought that was really interesting and also just quite noble and quite inspiring, because it's like, you could give up and you could really get mad at whatever you believe the powers that be, are in your life, but they leaned in and they felt like instead of him, that's the thing that kept him alive rather than, sort of, put him in danger. So I really, it was really inspiring just to see all of that happening in their family and see how their family sort of melded together and, in what their faith was. And just like, and being at that, I remember I was there that day that he retold the story from the beginning all the way until, after when he woke up and the paramedics were there and all that. I had to leave because I was so emotional just hearing him talk about it. He got choked, up too, but just being there, you almost could feel it, and it's like, can you imagine, and I think that's what we wanted to capture in the film and hopefully did, for people to say, like, if you've ever lived in a moment where you didn't know if you were going to make it or not, or if you've ever had someone go through a moment like that and to come out of it and to see what this guy's doing with his life after that, just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Right. No, yeah, exactly. And I said that to Cody yesterday. Me watching the film, it's like that, it's this story that you change. I need to shut up. There's nothing, I can't have a bad day after watching this, and you walk through this journey with this person. So, what do you personally take away from walking this journey with him and telling his story?
Yeah. And it's out of all the films I've made, this film has really stuck with me the most in terms of an everlasting effect. And it's not necessarily like the film process or this, grueling months of filming. It was Mario himself. Meeting a person that, of course he has bad days. Everybody does. But the fact that he can push beyond that, and you see with Mario that he has an extra 10% in him. People will max out, but Mario can keep going. And he was inspirational to me. He's exhausting. It was so hard to keep up with the guy. But when I'm having really bad days, it's nothing compared to what he has to go through on a daily basis just to get out of bed, just to tie his shoe, just to do things that we take for granted. He just does it, and he doesn't care what you think. He just does it, and it doesn't hold him back. So to me personally, it's like, that's really what's motivating me, is seeing these people that can work so hard and just doesn't, this is just the way they are. This is just how they're able to keep moving forward.
Right. Yeah. I want to ask about the device he built to allow him to drive. You said a minute ago he felt like a caged bird, but his determination to drive and reclaim his life led him to envision this device to allow him to do that. Was he a builder before? Was this something he conceived before the film he was working on? Did he do it during the film? Tell us a little bit more about what that was and how that.
Well, it's funny. So when I asked Mario and I was like, hey, how did, this device, how did you come up with that? Are you an engineer? Did you go to school? Like what, when I first met him, and he's like, oh, I don't know. I was bored and I needed something to do. So I needed to drive, and this is what I did. I made this so I could drive. So to him, it wasn't that difficult of a thought process. It was just like, yes, I needed to drive. I couldn't drive. So this is what I had to do.
Wow.
But during the filming, he was designing this device. The entire, he wakes up at like 4 to 5 a.m. every day, and he just works on it. And if he doesn't know something, he'll teach himself. He'll get like an engineering book that's, just super.
Have you ever designed anything before?
No, that's the thing. He was an artist, and he drew, and he was a martial artist too, and he was really creative before the accident. But when the accident happened, he just took every ounce that he had and learned about engineering and learned about 3D printing. And the guy is insanely smart. We had engineers looking at the stuff, and they're like, this is flawlessly good.
Wow.
So
Wow. That's incredible. So yeah, it is. It's one of those films that you know, definitely makes you sit up. And so, what would you like your viewers to take away from the film?
Um, Tiffany, I'll let you kick off this one, and I'll come back around.
What would I like viewers to take away from Driven? Um, well, hopefully they enjoyed it. To say the obvious, hopefully they enjoyed it. I think we all sort of had, you know, in making the film, we, you know, throw on log lines and language and all that, and everything that always keeps coming up is inspiration, and perseverance and resilience. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like you said, I can't even have a bad day now because of all the wonderful things that we learned, you know, from Mario. It's just like that overcoming spirit of like, it's just impenetrable. And I can't imagine, you know, being physically reminded of something that happened to me every day and still having the attitude to keep going.
Exactly.
You know, and it's like, we can't, it's a choice. I mean, it really is. And I know there's so many tough things that happen to us in our lives, but if we can just, I mean, thinking about the mental strength and the spiritual strength of this young guy is like all you can imagine. It's all you need to inspire you to get up in the morning and try it again if you failed. It's like overcoming what feels like a failure. It's actually turns you in, and it you know, he got reborn into this other version of himself that almost seemed more hypersensitive to ambition and resilience and all those things. So I would want people to walk away inspired, and walk away with a new dose of hopefully resilience, inspiration, and perseverance for whatever they might be facing in their lives as well.
Gotcha.
And yeah, and I agree to all of that. I mean, I hope this film, you know, can just truly, like, if someone is struggling, just can watch it and walk away knowing that, you know, this isn't the end. This is just one small moment. That's, even if it does change your life, it doesn't have to. So, and I think inspiration, and I mean, we say that a lot, but truly, I just hope this film, if someone is going through something similar, just can truly inspire them and help them, you know, regardless of what they face, you know, can elevate from that and keep moving forward.
Yeah, I so couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it has all that, and especially today when people are so challenged by so many things. That's what came to me when I was watching it. You know, it's a perfect time, you know, to for people to see how they can, as you said, you know, be born into another version of yourself. That you can find something deep within, that passion that you have for living what your true love is, that you can call on that to keep going. And that's what I took away from it, you know, myself personally. It's really wonderful. And yeah, so I just want to thank you for being here today with us. It's a really wonderful film. I encourage everyone
Thank
to
you.
see it when they can, however they can. So tell us what's next for you guys as filmmakers.
A lot
Cody
more.
never knows how to answer this, so I'll take it.
Yeah, please, Tiffany.
As a filmmaker, that question is obviously always being answered.
Right?
Cody and I are working on a film, with the current, you know, obviously global situation of the pandemic. It's, you know, dates and times and feelings and things are all up in the air, but we are planning on doing our next project together, hopefully in the spring, you know, should things look better then for all of us. But yeah, our next one's coming out. I won't talk about subject matter, well, you know, because things are all up in the air, but we are working on something in the spring, another short documentary, profile based, some sort of similar work but much different subjects. So I'm excited for the next Cody Wilson original. Hopefully everyone else is too.
Very cool. Yeah.
I'm honored to be back as a producer. I obviously did something right. So
Great. All right, guys. Well, thank you. And where can we find you on social media? How do we follow you? Follow and hear more about.
Well, we have a website, so driventhefilm.com. And then we have also, I mean, we just have Instagram, so feel free to follow us, reach out. But honestly, I think if anyone needs some social media credit, it's Mario. So please reach out to Mario on Instagram.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mario has it's just is his name, Mario.
I think it's just Mario Bonfanti.
Yeah.
So
Mario Bonfanti at Mario Bonfanti on Instagram.
Yeah.
Okay.
So-
No, it's him from all the racing. That you'll see.
Okay.
He's definitely a connoisseur of all things racing. So
Yeah.
So yeah. But I'm Tiffany.gist. I think Cody's
Cody dot. I don't know.
like Cody.
Cody dot C dot Wilson. Well, I couldn't think of anything.
Cody.C.Wilson. You're a little yeah. He's a little common, so he had to add this.
Right, you have to, right? So all those names, other than you don't want to do the numbers thing. Don't.
Yeah.
I know the numbers thing is awful. Yeah.
Yeah.
We can keep the C. It's his middle name.
Yeah.
I won't divulge to the world.
Thank you.
All right. Well, it's been such a joy to talk with you guys this afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and I wish you all the best going forward.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much. And yeah, I can't wait for the next New Filmmakers LA event.